with a special.
Yay! We're live. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to our first Facebook Live. We are going to be chatting today about the art from the new Marvel books that we revealed yesterday. With me, I have Mark. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, Mark?
Do I have to speak in the mystical voice of the moderator? I was
yes.
startled by that. Rest of the time, she's from Southend. Hello, I'm Mark. I'm the cheeky chappy publisher behind Aconyte Books, previously known for helping start the Black Library, Angry Robot. I look after the slogans and everyone's well-being to varying degrees of success.
And we also have with us Nick. Nick, tell us
hi.
about you.
Sure, I'm Aconyte's publishing coordinator. In practice, that means I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, including preparing the cover layouts. So I end up designing and finalizing all the interiors and exteriors of the books, which is kind of cool. So Mark and I are both deeply involved in ending up with these two beautiful covers.
Yay! Now, talking about the covers, we're not going to show them off just yet, but I was looking at them both, and I couldn't help but notice that they're very, very different in their styles. We've got 4 different strands of Marvel stories coming out. So can we talk a little bit about why they are so different from each other?
We do. From first principles, the spirit behind the Aconyte novel range is to build a whole bunch of fiction, not just 1 or 2 tie-ins to key events, but a multi-year, multi-book plan to create, frankly, an entire library of stories, not dissimilar to the way that Star Trek, Doctor Who, indeed the venerable Warhammer books of Black Library do. So to that end, we have identified 4 key areas that we're going to put our books into. Heroines, you've seen, Legends of Asgard, ditto, and then Xavier's Institute, which is X-Men, and Untold, which is a sneaky way of rounding up bad guys, good guys, people who don't quite fit, magical characters, and some outliers from the rarer end of the deep, rich Marvel universe. So what we did really was we wanted to differentiate between the 4 strands. There may be more strands going forwards, in fact, almost certainly. So we sat down, Nick and I, and formulated some ideas as to how we could really give clear water between the 4 strands of books, the 4 series, through the graphic design. So the moment you saw them, that you knew where you were, and there wouldn't be quite so much confusion on the shelf by the time we got to book 402.
Next year.
Yeah. I think Legends of Asgard came easiest, didn't it? And in terms of style, it's plainly massive epic fantasy, and so we can adopt some of the more common traits that we get for epic fantasy novels of lovely, beautiful, big painted covers, warriors, giant monsters, eventually horses. Perhaps we don't really have anything with horseback, do we? I feel like horseback and axes needs to feature somewhere. We haven't quite found that yet.
The horse, of course, is the most dangerous thing in the whole of cover art. It's the true test of a real artist who can actually capture anatomy. Humans, they're kind of easy. Dragons, giants, you can do what you want. Horses, absolute deal breaker if you can't do a horse. And most people can't. There's so many covers, even epic fantasy covers that have sold many, many millions of copies that frankly have got My Little Pony being ridden by Conan on the front, which is not so good. So maybe we'll stay away from the horses. But even with Asgard, we did have options. You know, the world of Asgard and the 10 Realms through the Thor comics and all the spin-offs has been portrayed in quite a bunch of different ways. If you look at the movies, they show Asgard very much referencing the kind of techno future gothic of a Steve Ditko, with amazing towers that from a distance look like they're very technological, almost cyberpunk, but when you get up close they're plainly very arcane things, and thus the kind of techno retro Viking styling of Asgard is portrayed. We pushed a little darker, didn't we, into the more sword and sorcery feel, with that kind of swirl of mists, epic creatures, tiny guys with the most enormous, howling rune blades, pushing as much into the areas of Conan or Elric book covers as Thor, at least as a starting point. but then bringing in, of course, the detailing from the actual characters. Tyr in the second one we'll see a little later, and for the first one, Heimdall.
Before we move on to my next question, we do have a question in the chat.
Oh, already.
So yes, Scott would like to know, do these stories that we're writing fit into a specific universe? Or
good question. You know what, they both do and don't. We're calling it 618, neighbor of the MCU. The books are a way of retelling classic events or filling in the gaps. We know from some people, some of our characters' backstories, that there are events that are referred to or covered in passing, which we're going into a lot more detail on. But we can't help, as we write, and by we I mean the talented authors we work with write the books, that they will add their own detailing, which of necessity will nudge it ever so slightly into a different version of the multiverse. So we're calling it Universe 618 at the moment. But of course, that close to 616, pretty much all the truths you know about the Marvel Universe are still in place.
Perfect. Well, let's move on to actually having a look at the covers. So we have Domino first, and our artist for that is Joey Hifi.
Yeah, well, of course, we talked a bit about Asgard, but for our heroines, we wanted something very, very striking. The central thing about the heroines, and they are expressly engineered to show off characters, strong central female characters, in some cases who haven't had the full day in the sun recently, whether in the movies or the headlines, but of course have continuing to have their stories explored month in, month out in the comics. For these, we wanted someone who could do strong, striking central female characters, but in a very designed sense. And we'd worked with Joey Hifi at Angry Robot, where myself and indeed Nick worked until we started Aconyte a couple of years ago. We'd worked with him. I think he had a cover in our catalogue at least once every year, starting with Lauren Bucas's amazing Moxieland and Zoo City. And he's a fellow South African citizen like herself, and she brought him on board, suggested him. And then to Legendary Effect with Chuck Wendig's covers. And we can see one of his covers for Chuck here that we published at Angry Robot. Very strong visual appeal, very poster-like, limited palette. You know exactly what you're getting in this case with the deadly Miriam Black with death in her eyes. It was fabulous to find, actually, when we went and chatted with him, because I haven't commissioned anything for a couple of years while we've been setting up Aconyte, to find out that he'd recently been doing some covers for Serial Box and their online serial fiction from the worlds of Marvel as well. And in fact, had been working in one of the other lines in Asgard with Thor for them. And this is just appearing week by week, month by month on their site. So for him, he was plainly going to be our guy for our very designed, strong central female character, limited palette, and with a semi-abstract background that brought the best of poster design to bear on some already strongly established characters.
Oh, I love that tiger. It's great.
So,
he's a lovely fella to work with, Joey, or Dale. We should call him by his proper name, I suppose. He sent us 27 roughs in the first instance. Now, a lot of them were variation 1, 12 different colorways, different backgrounds, all that sort of stuff. But we did have a whole bunch of poses to choose from. Yeah,
so I'm just going to zoom in on like a couple of them here.
Yeah, he gave us these two incredibly strong color choices. We weren't specific about colors. We knew we wanted something very striking that would jump out and punch you in the eye. And he came back with these two almost reverse colors of each other, the bright pink and I guess it's kind of teal turquoise. They're both so striking. I think this is the main problem, really, wasn't it? It's choosing between them and trying to get to a final version of it. There's such strong
really like these colors, yeah.
Yeah, actually so the bottom two as well, Angelo, because he did give us a whole bunch of action shots as well, a bunch of leaping poses. Part of this is because when we send a brief, we show off a bunch of things in the zone that we're thinking of, that we wouldn't be unhappy if they were a bit like these. We're quite known back in the Angry Robot days and now through Aconyte for our detailed cover briefs, where for someone we've worked with in the past, such as Dale, Joey Hifi, frankly, all we do is give him 20 things he might want to think about and let him, cast them as he may. For Grant, who we'll talk about in a bit, we were a little more prescriptive and were showing far more specifics. So for this one, we had the character, we had some elements, and we had some ideas, but he then went and built them. The rose window was in right from the beginning. We called it the rose window, but actually, if you look in closely, particularly when we get to the absolute finished version, it's mostly made up of guns, knives, bullets, and stabbings. Not the most religious establishment, as it turns out.
It's an important part of the novel, though. There are a lot of religious influences in the novel, and it's set in Chicago. It's quite a lot of fun to go and do virtual tours of the Chicago churches and cathedrals, trying to find Church of the Sacred Heart. And they have many, many beautiful stained glass windows. And it would have been hard to avoid sticking them in. I'm so pleased Dale went for that.
Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on these stained glass windows.
You can see around the edge there's various dagger shapes, and there are pistols hidden in there, and then the cathedral itself. You can see bullets around the edge. And but ultimately the more poised, posed with the gun layouts were working better for us, particularly once we dropped them down a little to create that sort of bottom angled space for the lettering. And then we simply had to decide only between one gun or two, and whether it was colored backgrounds in teal or pink or one of the more wireframe ones. And
let's have a look and see what we chose. Zoom in on that. Whee. There we go.
So this brings us the best of every world. We get enough detail on the rose window, angled actually in the final version. So it's plain we're looking up at her, which quite rightly we should be. She's a very admirable character to be looking up to. We did notice just before we were finalising this that she had both her safety catches off on the guns under her armpits, which she's an expert markswoman, we understand. So we've adjusted those, and but her finger's still ready on the trigger. We ended up with the one gun. It seemed rather than the second gun in the other hand, just for a balance and grace. I think that element of deadliness plus athleticism plus, frankly, attractiveness reached its peak with this one. And then pink and teal, and we tried with some reds and blues as well. We just put that to the public vote because we weren't sure at all. We'd got so close to it. So the team at Marvel, who we work with, and a couple of the gang here at Aconyte all had a little look, and we took a vote, and then we ignored them. Then we went with the favoured one, and I think it's an absolutely cracking piece of work. The spine is mostly pink, black, and white, so no one can mistake this on the shelves, whether it's face out or just spine out.
Yes, I still sort of miss the shaded rose windows, but I have found an opportunity to use them elsewhere, which is lovely. They're very satisfying. Also, I have my desktop wallpaper, which is just
so you start mentioning you're doing that. People are going to want us to upload those for download as well, then, aren't they? So
well, that would be a terrible thing.
Lovely Marvel folks.
Yeah. Right. So
when you come to look at the future heroine series covers, you will see actually there is a plainly a style aesthetic. They're not all going to have the angled titling or whatever, but every single one of them, strong, very powerful woman against a semi-abstract background that has elements from the story within it. And I'm saying this knowing exactly what the next cover is going to be, and wishing I could show it to you today as well.
Yeah. I just remembered that one. I was like,
not to denigrate. all by Dale, all by Joey Hifi as well. And we'll be starting work on the third one shortly as well for end of next summer.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move on to the other one, which is the Head of Mimir, and this one is done by Rod Griffin.
Yeah, I've been trying to work with Grant for a long time. He's done a lot of work in the role play field. He's done stuff from friends of ours at Green Ronin on their material. And actually, fairly recently, he illustrated George Mann's book of Star Wars Legends, which I only noticed the other night. George being a good pal of ours here in Nottingham on both the writing and publishing side. And we'd never quite got it together back in the Angry Robot days. But look at this picture of Elric there with his enormous rune sword. This is from, I think, a limited edition of Michael Moorcock's Elric and the Skraeling tree, though I could be wrong on that. But we wanted someone who could do real dark, gloomy, portentous sword and sorcery, but obviously show us that he could do that kind of retro future Viking style of the Asgardians as well. Have you got his other Elric picture there as well? So this one, not so much the Elric figure, that's strong enough, but it's the swirls within that we're way beyond anywhere made by man. And that was a big element in what we were looking for these.
Right.
Grant,
so let's talk a little bit about briefs. So when you go to sort of after you've found your artist, and how do you go about asking them or explain to them the idea that you have for the covers?
With many, many words and many, many pictures. They do take a while to come together. It's a couple of days of looking up pictures that are similar, finding art references that sort of fit both in tone and subject matter, and also very specific details, much as in the Domino one. They're finding the very specific windows and other details that match. But part of it's trying to find an aspect of the book that reflects the whole book and shows both the promise and the theme. Ideally something very actiony, and Head of Mimir was quite straightforward from that point of view. We have a lovely big beastie in Head of Mimir, Nidhogg the serpent, who lurks around the base of Asgard, who's an absolute gift in terms of finding inspiration for, and for then getting Grant to draw him.
Yeah,
so
it turned into a theme actually across the series, because again, when we come to the next one, when we show that off, you'll see there's a similar theme of enormous beast and not so puny but still very small sized Asgardian. So yeah, so Grant thankfully didn't send us 27 roughs, but he did send us these 3, and showing different aspects, all with that tiny character doing that death or glory leap into the maw of the beast, the absolute epic final boss battle from the book. And he's a goner, but again, of course, against all the odds and with some cunning, unexpected twists, that will see him win through to the end.
I really like these. I'm a huge fan of like concept arts and this sort of like really sketchy art that still looks way better than anything I could do.
It's very inspiring.
Yes, I'm with you there.
I love the great big dragon head on him. It's just delightful.
And I think the only thing Marvel wanted us to do, they agreed with us that of the 3, that the first one was perhaps the strongest, but they wanted Heimdall, for it is he in the top left corner, doing even more of a death or glory leap. In the first one, if you quickly flip back, you'll see it's more like he's dropping in. He could do the one knuckle to the floor superhero landing rather than actually land on the dragon. But there's no question in this one that big git is getting it between the eyes if Heimdall has anything to do with it. And then it was simply a matter of actually moving him up or down a bit to make the titling fit, if I can be honest. It's not all the glamour of high art. Sometimes it's just snipping stuff out in Photoshop and just nudging it down a bit and saying, try this, till we get him into the right place. Sometimes we do that where you get the most amazing piece of art and then you put the titling on and it's like, oh, goodness sake, we should have done that earlier because that doesn't work at all. And what a brilliant piece of art. It has to go hand in hand with the art. I think the other thing we've learned on a bunch of... I'll just finish in a moment.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Angela's been warned. Ask me one question, I'll go for 3 hours. Well, it's what I do for a living. It's my passion. And I have no social skills, plainly. Sometimes we get art that looks a little unfinished. And actually, if you look at this is really quite open. There's, particularly in the lower half, there's very little, because Grant knows, with a lot of experience doing covers, that someone has to put the book title and the author name somewhere. So a little bit of nudging here and there always needs to go on. But you had a question, or rather Ian did.
So it wasn't really a question, it was just Ian was saying that he thinks it's really interesting to see the design and concept stages here, because they're very similar to that used in film and in gaming. It's clearly a way of working that just works for everyone. And I've spoken to Ian a lot about concept art and gaming art books, and he knows that, yeah, this is my favourite style for that very reason. Yeah,
in due course, we hope Aconyte will be covering more of that on the art book side, whether it's us or one of the teams associated with us at Asmodee. There's a lot of amazing art within the Asmodee properties already, and it'll be a privilege to look behind the scenes on somehow some of those other ones were created as well. For us,
well,
yes, unquestionably, the sketches we always will. So this is where we ended up. Why is it blue, Nick? Is it because it's an ice cavern, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, Nidhogg inhabits, I can't remember what it's called now, what the area is. I keep forgetting. Frost Giant World.
Begins with a J, yes. Probably.
Jotunheim, sure. Jotengard, one of those.
Oh, I can't remember. Said that having just done work on one of the other Legends of Asgard books, I'm now confused about which one's which. Oh, we're in Niflheim, the world of primal ice. So yes, that does fit, and we got a little bit of a hint of the roots, a little bit of the sky above, everything reflecting off the lovely ice.
And as it happens, we know the second one is a very different color. And again, you're not just working on one cover at any time. You're looking at the range, the series, how they're going to sit together on the shelves and across time as well. Oh, and always trying to avoid greens and browns, because they can look dull on shelves. Unless, yeah, you're doing something that is in the middle of a forest with an elf in full dress uniform. So even then, making purple.
They're going to look delightful next to each other. And we end up with a lot more colour in Heimdall coming down as well. He's the only real note of contrasting colour in there. Some rich golds and stuff in there. Very pretty.
Yeah, what we found with the concept art is that you can get to a certain level with that very sketchy style, and then it needs 2 or 3 more little passes on the highest level of detailing for the key areas you want to pick out, and then you get a real 3D effect. So it's going to be hard to focus way in, but if you can go somewhere down around the H on head, you can see that the sketching in the background is really down to. Can you increase the size on that a bit, Angela?
Yeah, that's
really it is sketched in. So the background is its tendencies, its allusions to things as much as anything, shapes within the mist, and that of course really helps bring out the misty nature of it, which is what we wanted from Grant particularly. But then by the time you get into back of Heimdall, every detail in him has to be picked out because he needs to be a fully living, breathing character. But then by the time you get into his cape, we're back into the realm of the abstract again.
It's true. Even for a tiny little Heimdall, we still needed to have his kind of iconic helmet visible in there. He's got shoulder pads, which he's always got in the comics.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's moving at quite some speed, so it's not as clear as it would be if he was standing still.
We'd like to think his sword is going to go straight through the middle of that thing, but I think there's more to the story than that, I suspect.
So right at the beginning of the stream, Annie asked a question, but I thought it would probably be best to have this at the end rather than at the beginning. So Annie said, do we each have a favourite? Can we choose between our children which ones we love more?
No, which one do we send away?
Well, I'd say of the heroines covers we've shown off so far, Domino's my favourite. Is that the best we can do? Actually, what's surprising me, because I'm very cynical and I work the guys very hard to get these things absolutely the very best that we can, that all of our covers are damn good. We're also we're working for the first time with Marvel for any of us. None of us have worked directly hand in hand with Marvel, unlike other bits of the Asmodee teams. And they have very high standards as well, of course, not just because they're their crown jewels and their babies that they look after, but because Marvel is an absolute fountain of excellence as well. So I have to say, I'm just very pleased we've done an amazing job, and I wish I could show you all the others because they're all as good as these.
Oh, they are all so beautiful.
Soon though. We'll get them soon. Yay.
And I noticed Scott asked us a cover about when spines don't match for a book series. We hear you, man. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay, mate.
Yes, the book sizes aren't going to change radically either. That would be distressing. That always gets me on a bookshelf, high to low, halfway through a series.
Now, I'm not going to promise that in 7 or 12 years' time, when we come to refresh for a whole new relaunch, that they won't all be different. But yes, all of these we're determined to make match up and look glorious on the shelves.
Yeah, they really are.
So that sort of draws this first Facebook chat to an end. Half an hour. Well done, us keeping to time. High fives all around.
Thank you.
Yes. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. Let us know via Facebook. Send us a message, or via Twitter. If you want us to cover any particular sort of things within the process of making books or talking with authors and things, do let us know, because I can get those sorted out and we can do more of these, because they're fun and we're lovely people and we like to talk about our books. So
try and get some artists on.
Mark and Nick for coming along. You want to say?
You're welcome. As you know, I'm just sitting in my garden, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Your gazebo.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming along. Visit us at aconytebooks.com and you can find out more about these books and all of the other wonderful books we're doing as well. But thank you so much everyone for coming along, and we shall see you again soon. Bye-bye everyone.